I rise to support this continuing resolution. As we know, the Senate is set to pass a short-term funding bill while negotiations continue on a longer-term funding bill for the rest of the year. The administration has presented us with a request also to fund the government next year and is expected to ask for an increase in the federal debt ceiling. Now, this legislation cuts about $4 billion, but up against our annual deficit or the total debt, it is but a micro drop in the budget. The federal government is on track to spend about $3.7 trillion this fiscal year, while taking in only $2.2 trillion in revenue. If we compared this to a middle-class example, it would be as if someone was spending $37,000 a year with an income of only $22,000. Replace 1,000 for a trillion, and you get a good idea of how fiscally irresponsible the federal government has become. We have a $14 trillion debt, and as we all know now, we are borrowing 40 cents of every dollar that we spend. Clearly, there is a growing danger in the country to tremendous debt and runaway spending, and it's this resolution that will help, in a very small way, put us on the better track. I encourage us to use a multi-pronged approach as we move forward. We need to reverse the current spending trend of the Congress. We need to address long-term obligations and put statutory backstops into place to make sure it'll be very difficult for future Congresses to do what past Congresses have done. Now, as a very new member of the Senate Appropriations Committee, I'll be asking federal agencies to identify further programs and ways to reduce federal spending. Now, the administration has been on the right track in several key areas. They have proposed to cut or terminate almost 150 discretionary programs that would save about $21 billion, and defense programs that would save about $25 billion. But that savings should be put to reducing our total need to borrow and not pumped back into additional spending by the government. Additionally, we need to incorporate what we just learned from the Government Accountability Office about inefficient and duplicative areas of the federal budget. GAO's recommendations for consolidation and eliminating programs should be fully reviewed and in many places implemented for next year's budget. Now, Treasury Secretary Geithner will soon ask the Congress to increase the allowable federal debt a fourth time for the last 2 years. In my judgment, Congress should say no unless such an increase is coupled with new and dramatic anti-spending reforms that would make any future additions to our debt nearly impossible. While defaulting on is not an option, Congress must tie future debt limit extension to reforms that produce much smaller and smarter government. As Indiana's Governor Daniels has said, you will never know how much government you won't miss. And with that, Madam President, I yield back.